Hey, I'm Brad Miller, and here with Jason Medford, and today we are walking a spiritual path. And we want to talk about, well, I'm not really sure exactly what going to talk about in this episode exactly, but um, one of the things that kind of popped into my head right before we hit record on this is, what do you want to be when you grow up? I think a lot of times, well, I'll start from my own experience. So when I was in high school, I suppose, um, they always start thinking, okay, what do you want to do when what are you going to do when you grow up? What career do you want to have? Because this impacts the college you go to, the classes you take here in high school, even. Is it more of like a college prep kind of a course work, or is it more of a technical trade sort of thing? Like kind of what you want to do afterwards impacts what you might want to do here. Um, and so when I was in high school, I decided that I wanted to be a lawyer. More specifically, I wanted to be a judge, but I knew that to be a judge, you first had to be a lawyer. So I'm like, all right, I want to be and I wanted to be a judge because I watched the TV show The Practice on television with Dylan McDermott. And I did not want to be Dylan McDermott or any of his law firm people. I wanted to be the judge in the courtrooms that they'd appear in front of because I thought that looked like that would be a really fun gig to have. That I'd be up there and I'd be able to command the courtroom and tell people order and this is my decision and all these kind of fun things and that seemed like that's what I wanted to do. So I did it. I went to law school, took the classes I needed to get there and all this kind of stuff. Um, Became a lawyer and then saw, you know what, that's not what the judge's life is like at all. Like it's totally not what I saw on television. It's not what I see in real life. Um,
What?
I know. I cannot believe it either. It's television makes stuff up and it's not necessarily realistic life. And so I quickly saw judges for what they actually do and decided, yeah, no, I want nothing to do with that. Like that looks miserable. That's not enjoyable at all. But again, at that point, I had a law license and I wanted to be able to help people, because I always kind of had that kind of little inkling in there, even though at that point it was still kind of small. So I decided I need to do something different. I'm gonna be a lawyer. We're gonna do that thing, and that's kind of what I've done here for the last almost 20 years as being a lawyer, because Plan A didn't necessarily pan out like I thought it was, and so we're just kind of riding with things how they are. And so I find it interesting when people say, what do you want to be? Did you always know you wanted to be a lawyer? Is that, why did you become a lawyer? Thinking that, oh, because I wanted to right injustices. I wanted to be the person there to help the little guy who's, being taken advantage of by the big bad corporations or things like that. And he says, no, I actually don't never really wanted to be a lawyer per se. That was just what I needed to do to get to be a judge. That's where I got there. And the reasons I wanted to be a judge looking back were kind of silly. It looked fun. Like I wanted to be able to have that gravitas that they had in the courtrooms, and so I come to today and I, I, yes, I'm still a lawyer, but I don't necessarily identify very strongly as one. Like it is definitely down on my list of kind of how I see myself as a lawyer. And what this has anything to do with our discussion today about spirituality. Um, so besides the fact that I've been doing a lawyer and doing a law practice on the side, I've also kind of held out this thought, this feeling, this idea that I want to be able to help lawyers. It started early on based on my experience of coming out and starting my own practice. And I want to be able to help lawyers in some capacity. And I thought that that meant some sort of maybe one-on-one coaching sort of a thing that I need to be working with them. I'd have they would be paying me for my time or for meeting with them, and it would be that kind of a relationship where I'd be helping them work through things, and then they'd have a better practice, a better life, whatever. But that hasn't really worked out for me. Not that I've been bad at it or that I've not been able to help people, but I just haven't got a lot of traction with it, and I've struggled to figure out why that is. And so about a week and a half ago, I don't even know what I was doing outside. I was sitting here at this desk And I feel like a lot of good things, ideas that come happen at this desk recently as I'm sitting here in this chair. So I'm sitting here, and all of a sudden in my head came the idea that, you know what, you're looking too low. We're not helping people one-on-one coaching. We need something bigger. We need to change the legal profession and make it better for lawyers at a higher level. Fuck.
Well, and I think it's funny because as you're sitting here talking, I mean, a few things kind of pop back into my mind that I hadn't really thought about, before. Because I think part of this discussion is really kind of a difference of Dharma versus your 9 to 5. And I think sometimes on a spiritual path, we feel like whatever we do 9 to 5 to make money has to be our Dharma, right? But that's not necessarily the case. They're two different things. But I find it interesting, especially in my own life, how sometimes we end up coming full circle and we don't realize, and sometimes it takes us, in my case now, 30 or 40 years to come full circle on something.
It's a bigger circle for some
It's a
people. It's
it's a bigger circle. Well, I'm a big guy,
you have a big beard at least, so there's that.
big beard, big something.
Mhm.
But what's interesting, because same thing. I mean, I was actually going to be a lawyer. Same thing. I was going to be a poli sci undergrad, get my law degree. Why? Not to be a judge, but to be a politician and to become the president of the United States. Right? That was where I was kind of going with it.
I'd have voted for you.
Would you vote? Yeah,
Yeah,
Jason on 2024 or 28, whatever. Um, but what's interesting is, that was the path that I was headed down. That's why I went to a certain university my first year, because that was my intention, right?
mm,
And then I took a couple of years off to go on a Mormon mission and came back and was going to finish my degree. And Spirit kind of put some things in my way and made me realize, well, hold it, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. And so I ended up in accounting, right? Going to school for accounting. I mean, big shift, right? In some
mm,
ways, yes, in some ways, no. And so, but I was doing that kind of from a practical standpoint. You can always get a job as a CPA, right? I mean, there's plenty of jobs out there. There's lots of work, to be able to do that way. But I never really identified as a CPA. I didn't want to be known as a CPA. I didn't tell people I was even a CPA, because the first thing they ask is, "Can you do my taxes?" And there was no way in hell I was going to do people's taxes, right?
mm.
No, 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 right?
I'm not a tax guy. Yeah.
I'm not a tax guy. And so, I went kind of one route in my profession for a long time. But, what's interesting is, as I think about it now, because as you were talking, Brad, it's for a while I've been sitting there thinking, why did I go through accounting and get an MBA and become a CPA? Why did I do that? Right? That doesn't seem very dharmically attached, right? That seems so 3D. But what's interesting, I mean, I've always done my own taxes. I've had several businesses, had to do that. I'm a trustee in certain, family trusts and other things like that. And so I've always, behind the scenes, kind of used some of those skills that I learned in college to help me as a business owner, to help some family members, things like that, right? And what's interesting though is the class that was the easiest for me in high school, it just made sense to me, and I got really good grades, was accounting, of all things. And I never even really thought of that until you had just, we're talking right now, and it's like, oh, huh. But as I've sat with, why did I do accounting and all this kind of stuff. What's been interesting is the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of people have been complaining to me, if you will, about the experience they've had with their CPAs and tax troubles they've gotten themselves into and other things like that. And it got to a point to where finally I was like, okay, fine, I'll help you do your taxes. Right.
If you just shut up, just like shut up and I'll do it
Yeah,
for you.
I could see and could understand, some of the things people were going through, and I didn't want them to go through that because taxes causes a lot of stress and anxiety and fear and everything. Oh, the big bad IRS, all this kind of stuff, right? And so, for a few friends, I kind of did some stuff and it's just continued to grow. I haven't done anything, but people keep reaching out to me. I just had a call yesterday with a friend of mine that, has some issues. And so, but I take a different view on it. And what's interesting is it's tax time right now as we're recording this. So I'm finding myself, in the tax program and doing stuff. And guess what? I actually kind of enjoy part of it, and it allows me to kind of do stuff by myself without having to be in front of people, and so it's not that I don't enjoy the work. I actually kind of enjoy the work, which is interesting because I never thought I would have done that. But the point of the story is I think as I look at it, do I identify with being a tax person, a CPA? No, not necessarily, but those are some skills that I have that I can help people with. But what I'm really helping with is helping to reduce the stress and anxiety and fear on people and helping them to understand better and make it not so scary for them. Right. Like I had one friend that, she had a really weird tax year with a divorce and selling a house and moving and having to liquidate some securities and other things. And she was just, you know,
Mhm.
about all this tax that she thought she was going to have to pay until I sat down and talked to her and we went through the facts and circumstances. And it's like, no, you're not really going to owe much in taxes. Yeah, you probably shouldn't have done those things because, but she didn't ask me. But she wasn't going to owe anything like what she thought she was going to. And in
Mhm.
fact, when we got done, she got a little refund, instead of, and so it just helped her put herself in a better place emotionally, spiritually by having that. I talked with a friend yesterday too. IRS, once they get on you, they start sending you all these letters, and it's Greek to most people. And she was confused, and they kept asking her to pay this money, and she didn't know why. And they said one number, and then they sent her another letter for another number, and she paid that. And now they're still after her. And, so I went through and kind of looked at it and talked to her and was able to, again, explain what's happening. This is why they're doing it. Here's what I would suggest that you end up doing. And so it's not, and I think, it kind of goes back to the intention too, right? Is my intention to make a bunch of money doing people's taxes? No. In fact, I can make a lot more money doing other things, but I don't do it for the money, even though I need to get paid and I do get paid for it. But I do it more, to help alleviate the stress and anxiety and fear that people have and to help them feel more empowered, right? Even one year I remember, this one friend of mine usually had when they were married before their partner always just used some CPA firm or did it themselves. And so the first year after a divorce, this person was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to do this, right? And even me just sitting down with them for about an hour and saying, look, you can use, TurboTax or whatever this year. And this is how you do it. This is what these things mean. This is how you would kind of fill it out and just kind of shared with them how they could do it on their own. Right. And I remember the person saying, I feel so empowered now. And it's like, oh, I never thought about that. But I guess that's another thing that maybe I'm trying to do as well. And it goes for anything, right? I mean, I'm talking about taxes, you're talking about law, but it's really in anything that we're doing. I mean, the other businesses that I have too, it's not, people think I'm just out to make money. and yeah, and I need to make some money from it. I got bills to pay. But, underlying the real reason is not what they think the real reason is, right? And some people will never understand it, and that's okay. We just have to do what we got to do.
Mhm. Yeah. So that's, and again, it's distinction between, and something I wrote down here as you're talking about, we tell people, or, the common thing is follow your passion. I think a lot of people take that to mean I got to figure out what it is that I love, that I could only do, if I had to, could only do one thing, this is what it was, and that's what I have to make my living off of. And I don't think that's the case. You know, I don't think that you need to find just one thing and make it that one thing that lights you up, that you can't imagine doing anything else. I mean, 'cause I think first of all that puts a lot of pressure on yourself to figure out
Mhm.
what that is. Because what if it's the wrong thing that you pick? Like, what if this is not really your passion, or if it's fun to do now, but what if it's not fun to do tomorrow? But I don't think that something we've talked about, I think, on previous episodes, is I think it's okay to have something different that you call your day job, your 9 to 5 or whatever, the thing you do to make money to pay your bills, and the stuff that you do as part of the reason you're here,
Mhm.
the service that you're here to provide on the planet, the reason why you came. We come to this planet, I think, for two reasons. One is to grow and evolve, and the other one is to serve. You know, but I don't
And the
think that.
more and the more we serve, the more we grow and
Right,
evolve.
right. They're interrelated, exactly.
Yep.
But I think we put so much impetus on the service, and that thinking that has to be then what we're getting paid as our daily job to do.
Or we
And
have to do it for free.
or that we have, or if not, that we have to do it for free, that this is something that we have to just give away to other people because this is what we're called to do. People call it a calling. We're called to do serve in this way, and so I can't imagine charging for that because that's what I'm here to do on this planet, right? Um, and those are both. I mean, at one point or another, I'm sure those are both things that I've thought has gone through my head. Is how do I charge for something that's kind of my natural gifts and my passion, or or that I have to have the thing that I do every day in 9 to 5. That's got to be what I do. That's aligned, my aligned, passionate, whatever like that. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think you can have different pockets. You can have here's what I do in the 9 to 5. Here's the stuff that I do that helps a greater service, of a greater purpose for it. And you can get paid to do some of that. You can get paid for some of this greater service. It may not be something regular. It may not be what your 9 to 5 kind of a daily job is, but I think that's okay. You don't have to have everything all nice and in these little, package lined up like that.
Well, and I think I mean, because you and I have seen this in some of the communities we belong to, but when people start on a spiritual path, a lot of people think, "Oh, I can't charge for doing this," and so they feel like they can't have any money and they need to do everything for free and serve, 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 no money. Other people that think, no, my dharma, my purpose has to be how I make money, and so people will quit, six-figure corporate jobs to go make $10,000 a year doing something. To me, that's just always seemed really stupid. It's their path; they can do what they want, but I think what you bring up is there is a difference between our work, our service, and maybe what we do for our 9 to 5. For some people, those line up exactly. What they do to make money is exactly what their passion is, and they can make lots of money doing it. Great. It's few people that's the case that I see. Because often what happens is, I'll take artists as an example. There's a lot of people who are very passionate about art in whatever form, sculpting, painting, whatever else, right? It's hard to make money as an artist. right? There's all the jokes about starving artists and other things on purpose. I mean, even the greats like Van Gogh, he had no money, even though his paintings now sell for, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, right? He never saw the money from it in his life. And so, often we have to have some way to pay our bills. And that's okay. That's part of this journey as well, folks, right? Is having that mundane job sometimes is part of our growth and evolvement. But, and so a lot of people who are artists may have to have a day job, may have a corporate job too. Um, and other people though, I think it's interesting because specifically, like I'm thinking about one of my sisters that I had this dialogue with. She's really good at making quilts, which is an art form. It's textile art,
Sure.
as well. And so she makes these beautiful quilts. And I remember one time saying to her, it's like you're really good at this. Why don't you sell some of these and make some money from it, right, to support your hobby? And she said, well, because if I started selling them, I don't think it would be fun for me anymore.
Right.
And I understand that. I get that, right? For some people,
Mhm.
whatever your art is, whatever is you're passionate about, if you feel like making money from that would squelch that joy, then don't take money for it. Just do it because you love it. Make
Mhm.
make art for art's sake, right? But what's interesting too is, then again, I mean, so obviously she can sew very well, being able to make the quilts. And what's interesting is, now she actually uses some of those skills to make money, right? It's not textile art, but it's, a company that needs, cushions made for things and stuff like that are special custom sizes. And so, she can sew those and make a little bit of money, doing that. And so I think it's interesting how sometimes we come in this big circle too, and things end up, working out much different than we ever would have anticipated, um, when we just allow things to happen.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm currently sitting. So this is the kind of being real with you here, listeners. So get in tight. We'll talk here. Um, I had this insight, if you will, a week and a half ago from the date we're recording this, and it kind of hit me. And I wasn't really expecting it, but as soon as the thought came to my head that you're supposed to be doing this is something bigger than what you're currently thinking, I got a chill. And that's one of my signs that tells me that something is the truth for me. When I get that feeling, that sensation, I've learned that that's something that's true for me. So I'm like, all right, that's kind of like, oh fuck. All right, so I guess now I've got to really start looking bigger. I've got to really level myself up. I gotta, to see what I do. But I have no idea what that looks like. I have no idea where it starts. I have no idea how to go about doing this, but I'm okay with that. And in the past, that wouldn't be the case. In the past, I'd be worried about, no, I need to know what step 1, 2, 3, 25, 37, 50, 142 are. I need to know all these steps. What is this going to look like? What does this path look like so that I can plan and make sure I'm on it and all this kind of stuff. But with this, I'm like, I have no idea what this is going to look like. I know I have an avenue through social media that I can share some thoughts on this, but beyond that, I don't know. I do not know what this these look like, and that's okay because I know that what'll happen is I will find something and the door will open, and maybe I'll take a step through that door, and then all of a sudden I'll be in a hall with more doors, and the path that I'm supposed to be taking will lead me there. We've talked about you did a great example in the past about we're in a dark room and we have a candle, and we can only see 1 or 2 steps ahead of us. So we got to take one step, and that lights a little bit further, and we take another step in a little bit further. But we can't see the whole room, so we don't know what else is in there. All we can see is just what's illuminated by this little candle, and that's kind of how things are going with this for me. And I'm like, it is gonna happen how it needs to happen. I'm not going to get too worried about what it looks like, what it should be. We're just going to take it this one little step and let the candle light the next and the next, and we'll go with it as there. And I've actually been very peaceful about that this last week and a half.
Well, I think it's interesting because again, we're just sharing our experiences, but all of you that are listening, this is, it's an example of what we've been talking about on many episodes, right? What happened? Brad was sitting there, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, seemingly out of the blue, some thought comes into him that is immediately confirmed by
Mhm.
a spiritual, sensation that he normally has when he knows it's right. So thought, confirmation, okay, now what do I do with it? I don't know, right? He didn't know, but, we can make one little step. We also don't want to just sit on our hands and not do anything about it. Like, nope, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to wait until I get the next inspiration or intuitive hit. It's like, no, usually there needs to be some action, right? And
Yeah.
so, I mean, Brad and I talk outside of recording these things too. So I knew what he's going through. And I'll tell you what, he's taken action the last week and a half. I've seen some differences in some of his posts and other things that he's done to make a little step in that way, right? And how it's going to unfold, who knows, right? But that's part of our growth and involvement is, listening to the spirit, feeling the confirmations, making decisions, getting confirmations, making a different choice if we need to make a different choice, right? And just ride that Zuvakaya wave, right? As we're going through this and realize that none of us know what's going to happen. I mean, like I said, even for me, it's like, am I going to just be a CPA and do taxes all the time to make all my money? I don't know. I don't know. Right. But a friend of mine told me there's not a lot of CPAs in Sedona. Wink, wink. And said that, several times. Right. It's like, I don't see myself doing that. But at the same point, if that's what I'm supposed to do, then I need to allow it to happen. Right. And
Mhm.
if it means other things that I'm doing need to go away, then they do. I mean, but effectively what I've been doing and working on the last year or two is my other businesses can now pretty much run on autopilot. I've automated most everything. There's very, very little time each week that it takes me to maintain and keep making some money from those businesses. And so it opens up a lot of other possibilities to do this, to do other things. I don't know, right? Only time will tell. I'll know when I know.
Mhm.
But at least for now, it's tax season. Clients keep coming in. If I can help people, I'm going to keep saying yes. And afterwards, we'll see, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's part of this evolvement and growth is we have to be comfortable with the uncomfortableness. We have to
Mhm.
get used to the darkness. We have to see in the darkness, right? And that's part of the journey is not knowing, but continuing to make progress, looking for the intuitive hits, guidance from spirit, looking for the confirmations. And I think really, just having the right intention because honestly, it doesn't matter what we do for a living to make our money because every job that's out there, right? If you have the right intention, you're helping the coworkers that you work with, right? You may sit there and think, "Oh, I just work a corporate job." Right? So I'm not really impacting the world. Oh, really? Well, don't you have coworkers that you're working with? So, how do you treat those coworkers? Right? If you treat them with love and kindness and try to be the peace and the calm, uh, that affects the people that work with you, right? And so you may think, well, I just work a corporate job, but you're actually doing something more. You're helping raise the vibration and frequency of people around you. You're being put in situations where you have an opportunity to not get wet, right? To actually, respond differently from your higher self instead of, being an asshole and being mean, right? And sometimes, that's we're always doing more than what we realize that we're doing. And so, you can have a corporate job, you can be an attorney, you can be a CPA to make money and still be fulfilling your dharma by how you are showing up and doing that work, the intention you have behind it, the love, the caring, the compassion that you show for people that you work with, for, customers, clients, whatever it is, to make other people's day brighter, to lift your vibration and frequency, and to help lift the vibration and frequency of anyone who comes in contact with you.
Mhm.
And that's spiritual.
It's all spiritual.
It's all spiritual. So I don't know, Brad, did we talk about what we were supposed to talk about today?
We always talk about exactly what we're supposed to talk about. We may not realize it ahead of time. And looking back, it may be kind of feel maybe it's kind of convoluted and that we took a lot of detours and roundabouts and loop backs and all that kind of stuff. But I think at the end of the day, we always talk about what we're supposed to talk about. Because whether something I get out of it, something you get out of it, something the person who's watching this gets out of it, there's something in there that people are going to be getting that they need to be here for. Um, and that's all we can ask for is, you know,
Perfect as it is, and
imperfect,
comfortable. Yeah, yeah, and comfortable
perfect in
in,
its imperfection. Yeah,
well, even to what I just said, right, or what I tried to say. So, uh,
exactly. Exactly.
yeah. So
So,
again, I mean, it's not because I think again from a spiritual path standpoint, you don't have to blow your life up. You don't have to quit your job and go be a monk somewhere, right? It's the main work is just how you are living your life differently and
mhm,
realizing the connection and the vibration and frequency you're bringing, how you're responding and helping others that come in contact with you feel your love and light that you're sharing with them. And so, yeah.
mhm.
So, as imperfect as we're both trying to do it, we're going to keep moving forward too. We're going to keep recording these episodes, even if we stumble over our words and
And we
make a
will.
bunch
Yeah.
of roundabouts and detours in it because we're just showing up being who we are and explaining the experiences that we're having and the lessons that we're learning from it. So,
Mhm. That's right. So thank you guys for listening to our rambles. Um, I'm sure, like I said, whether I get something, Jason, somebody's going to get something out of this. And it's going to be something that's going to kind of hit you and you're like, okay, that really, that impacts, that's relevant to me. So, hopefully you find whatever it is in here that's for you. As you're listening, we do appreciate you watching these episodes as well. Like Jason said, we'll keep doing them as long as there's things out there that need to be said, need to come through us. So, with that, thank you guys for listening. We hope you have a great week, and we will catch you guys on the next episode.
see everybody.